Kravitz. If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to episode 2, the Sunday edition of Keeneland Today. I am your host again with Howard Kravitz and Kyle Roscoe and Noah, all hanging out in Keeneland today. I guess you're stuck with me one more time for today's card at Keeneland, where myself and Charlie Freeman from Bettin' and Boozin', who I will be bringing on in a minute, will be discussing the late pick 5 today, races 6 through 10. So before we do that, let me jump quickly into some of the administrative stuff. As you can see scrolling on the bottom of the screen, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit that like button, hit the notification button. Again, we have a lot of Breeders' Cup pods that are going to be coming up over the course of the next few weeks. Some of them will be off schedule. So if you subscribe and you hit the notification bell, you'll be aware of when those pop up. Again, they might not be our normal Bettin' and Boozin' on Wednesday, flagship show on Thursday. So please do that. Also hit the like button so YouTube knows that this is a podcast that you like and enjoy listening to. For our audio listeners, same thing. Listen, subscribe, rate, review, wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Anchor, whichever one you use, doesn't matter. Please subscribe, rate, review. Go to social media, our HHH Racing podcast feed at H Kravitz. We're on Instagram, as you can see on the screen, instagram.com/HHH Racing Podcast. And then you can follow any of the hosts or co-hosts or contributors. We always have our Twitter handles on the screen as well. The website, hhhracingpodcast.com. Check it out. Tons of good information. If you're interested in the power picks, there's information there. There's samples. That's probably one of the more important things. There's pictures. Again, we should have some nice photos posted this weekend from the guys being at Keeneland. So check that out. There's information about all of us. There's example pods, example power picks. Everything you could need is on there. So please check it out. With regards to the power picks, our normal power picks, again, $15.99 a month, very cheap, $4, basically $4 a weekend. So super cheap. You get generally 2 cards. Sign up below the video player on Patreon or on the website. Again, there's links to our Patreon where you can sign up and subscribe. So please check that out. Definitely. We're talking about Keeneland today. Keeneland only power picks. As of now, the next 2 weekends, we have individual weekend subscriptions, meaning if you sign up they'll open back up for next weekend on Monday. If you sign up between Monday and Thursday at midnight for $15, you will get next weekend's Keeneland only power picks. That includes Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it's full ABC grids for the whole card. You get price and spot plays, you get other bets. So there's a ton of information on there. And again, examples of those will be posted on the website. So you could see what kind of information and the type of content we include. So please check that out. And again, if you want to subscribe, next weekend should be up tomorrow morning. Lastly, our next show, Bettin' and Boozin', normal time, Wednesday, October 11th, 9 p.m. Eastern. Instead of handicapping this week, I think this will come out more definitively early in the week, but I think we're going to start talking early Breeders' Cup discussions, and the B&B guys are most likely going to talk about the male and female sprint on Wednesday, along with all the sports action, which there's a ton going on, NFL, some wild college stuff, which I'll mention to Charlie when I bring him on in a minute. So please check that out. Our flagship show will be back on Thursday. We're going to be discussing some early Breeders' Cup action as well. So without further ado, let me bring on my co-host for today. You know him from Bettin' and Boozin' on Wednesdays. My man, Charlie Freeman. What's going on, Charlie? How's it going?
It's going pretty well. As you touched on with the college sports, the audience is going to have to bear with me. We had our home game against Maryland, so the voice is definitely rough. First game back in the shoe. Was so much fun to be at that game. A lot of yelling, though, so working through it. But, yeah, you want to talk about a crazy weekend of college football. I was checking scores every chance I could.
Well,
Unbelievable.
can I complain to you one thing about Ohio State? I had Maryland plus 19.5. And you mean you're up 17-10, you feel like you got it locked up. I don't care who won the game. I feel like I had it locked up, and then Maryland doesn't score again, and they lose by 20, lose by a half a point. So that was the most important thing for me. I'm sure for you, the win was the most important thing, even though you and the quarterback seem to have a love-hate relationship going on based on what I've seen from your tweets.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely a work in progress. I'm trying to stick to them, but no, I mean, I never bet against my own team, so I didn't touch the game. But I mean, I
Yeah.
was talking to my friends who asked me about it. I was telling them all to take Maryland. I loved Maryland. I think Talia is unbelievable, and really, I just think a few poor throws by him, the pick six, and then that other interception that gave us a short field. I mean, our offense couldn't get going at all game.
Yeah.
It was way closer than the score showed. In my eyes, it was like a 10-point win. I thought
Yeah.
it was the whole time. It was just a few bad miscues really gave us a huge benefit. And then Marvin Harrison Jr. is just unstoppable.
Yeah, he's unbelievable.
You just threw it to him and let him do what he needed to do.
Yeah. And I guess, unfortunately, I can't tell you're not allowed to tell the betting outlets that it felt like a 10-point game. So they should give me the money for covering the spread. And then the last thing I'll mention sports wise was one of the craziest things you ever see is the Maryland, Miami loss where they don't kneel down. And then
unbelievable.
we don't have to get into it because I don't know if people care on here, but if you didn't see it, there's a clip that sort of chops up where Miami had the ball. All they had to do was kneel down. They don't. They fumble. They give Georgia Tech a couple of plays, and they let a receiver with no time left basically get behind their whole defense and lose the game at home. It was literally like the whole Miami team had bet the Georgia Tech money line. So
it was unbelievable.
I
was watching it live. I was about to turn the game off, and then I literally just looked down at my phone because I got a text from my friend. I looked up and saw Georgia Tech at the ball. I'm like, what happened? They dropped a knee, and then I watched the replay. I couldn't believe it. And then next thing you know, it's a touchdown.
One of the craziest things I've ever seen. So let's get into it real quick. Like I said, we're going to talk about the late pick 5, races 6 through 10. Real quick, let's just give a shout out to see who's in the chat. We got Katie. Hey, Pete and Paul. Sorry, Katie, you stuck with Charlie. You get half old, half young today. So we got Mike Austin in here, Simon O'Neill. Go Jags. What is that? Is it still 11? Is it still 11-0? That was the last score I saw.
I believe so.
All right. Made in Focus, Phil Conte. We love the Italian contingent when we get them here. Great try yesterday. Yeah, but looks like some people cashed on that nice try that I gave out. So that's awesome. Let's see what we got. Howard, will you set up a membership on the channel anytime soon? We'll talk to Howard. Hopefully he sees this comment, and that's something definitely to think about. Made in Focus. This is up your alley, Charlie. Look, we got I like CJ Stroud. I mean, it's unbelievable that they're still keeping their props kind of low, which I guess people just haven't bought in yet, or Vegas hasn't bought in yet to Houston right now. Let's see. Anybody else I want to jump? Oh, Made in Focus. That's our horse. Just FYI. I know it's a horse he loves and touts out, and the public doesn't seem to respect him that much, or respect her, I should say, that much. Hey, Tony Rallo. Let's go, boys. Hashtag Team Shards. Tony's from Crownsway Racing, and we have a horse going, which we'll talk about. I won't spoil it now, but we'll talk about that in a bit. But let's get into it. Let me bring up. All right. Oh, actually, let me take that off the screen. Let me bring up the first race of the sequence. And Charlie, it's crazy. When you sent your picks over, I was like, did I accidentally not look at his picks and I copied my own picks? Me and you are in sort of lockstep, especially in the first basically 3 races, and then pretty close in the last 2. So we're either going to look really good or look really stupid today. So we'll see how that goes. But first race of the sequence, allowance, 6th race, post time 3:40. Post time for the whole card is 1 o'clock. If you're interested from the beginning, again, this is 3:40. We got an allowance, purse 110,000, about 7 furlongs, and I don't have scratches. If anybody gets scratches, I don't know, Charlie, if you're looking, or if anybody in the chat sees the scratches come through, let me know so I can refresh. And we can talk about scratches as well. We have a field of 8 going, and we have a big favorite with Irad up top, Antares, even money. Let's take a look. And you are going, I think you and I, let me bring up our picks. You and I are both 836. We are in lockstep. Like I said, you are going with the 8 Antares at even money on top. What do you like about this one?
Yeah, I'm very pleasantly surprised to see you had the 3 so highly. I was very surprised when I saw the morning line to see the horse at 15-1, but I definitely loved it as a price underneath. But yeah, starting with Antares, Iran, obviously one of the best in the business. I mean, the 1-to-1 odds, obviously not ideal. I don't even know if you'll get that. I think you'll probably get closer to like 4-5. Obviously, again, as you mentioned, we have to wait for scratches. But Antares just looks much the best. I mean, the figures are significantly stronger than any other horse in this field. Interesting, I actually just noticed this now, that the horse was previously trained by my boy Wesley Ward.
Yeah.
But yeah, has been getting there, had a solid win 2 back and then lost by just a neck in a very solid effort at Saratoga. And I just feel like any sort of repeat performance to that effort will easily best this field. And I'm guessing that's kind of where you were looking to.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at in that last race, you're looking at a loss to Gilmore, who's a graded stakes place horse. It's not like he's a graded stakes dog. He's actually run well, and Antares was right there with this horse. Again, I don't really have too much to say. Otherwise, the horse has been pretty good on all surfaces, which you always like to see. Picks up Irad from Dylan Davis. That's always nice. I mean, does he need the lead, and will he get that breaking from the outside? That's one thing, but you figure on pure talent and form and figures, he just looks like he lays over the field a little bit. So I think we're in agreement on that. We'll go to the 6 first, and then we'll talk about the little long shot, the 3. The 6, Wicco, I assume, for your guy, Wesley Ward. He's all over the page here today. What'd you like about this one?
Yeah, so I mean, I was trying to avoid the bias, but quite honestly, I was really just looking for anyone that I could see at least give some sort of threat to the 8. And I see a lot of speed in this race. I mean, the 8's going to go, the 5's going to go, the 4's going to go. I guess the 1 and 2 aren't, but I don't think they have enough speed. So I'm guessing that's kind of how you landed on 3 and 6. At least that was my angle, was just kind of look for those horses that'll get that nice stalking trip and sit behind. Because for me, whenever you see a really strong horse, I always look at what their style is, and I feel like for me, it's a lot easier if they're either speed or closer, because then you just got to go the other way. And since this one, obviously the 8's going to go to the front, you got to find a horse. The only way you're having a chance to compete is one off the pace. And I think Wicco's interesting. Last time out effort obviously wasn't good at all, but I just don't think the horse liked the turf. I mean, you look at the figures in the past on the turf, 49, 54, 55. I know it shows 71 last time out, so an improvement, but nonetheless, you see the stronger figures in 83 and 81 were both on the all-weather. So I just think this is a horse that could take nicely to the dirt, has been working on the dirt as well. And again, I just think this horse needs to avoid the turf and could sit a nice stalking trip to, I don't know necessarily win, but at least get somewhere in the money. And I don't think you'll get 9-2, but if you're getting at least 4-1, that would pay nice if you're trying to play some exactas underneath the 8.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's always tough when you have a horse who's never run on the surface. You still, no matter what, you never know what they're going to do. But I mean, this horse did take to the all weather. And again, that's closer to the turf, but at least there's some versatility there where didn't run awful on the turf, but ran better on the synth. But at least, again, versatility. You pick up Velasquez. Had a nice stat here. Wesley Ward, 6 for 14 wins, 11 for 14 in the money, going turf to dirt in the past year, which is nuts. I mean, so he can obviously get his horses ready. Yeah, I'd love to pick up a back of Johnny V, who has the only win with this horse. Johnny V was up back at Turfway. So I think this one, like you said, if you can get a stalking trip, if the 8 is really that good and just kicks away, then you want a horse who's just going to maybe clunk up for second. If some horses do go with the 8 and we get sort of a little bit of a speed duel up front, then again, you're going to want horses either sitting off or coming from way back. And I think this one fits that bill as long as he does, as long as he takes to the turf, which again, you're not or takes to the dirt. You're not 100% sure, but I guess we'll see. And thanks. Katie mentioned in here so far, no scratches in the 6th. I'll refresh the Equibase when we get back to it, because it seems like scratches are out. And then last, we'll go to the 3, 15-1, Seeking Unity. I have this horse in second. You have this horse in third. What do you like about this one that we're hopefully getting a price? And especially if you like the 8, you're going to look for a nice price underneath if maybe you want to just do a cold exacta or something.
Again, and yeah, for me, that's how I would likely be approaching this race. Is I'd probably do an 8-6 and an 8-3 exact and just hope one of them gets in there. But I was very surprised this horse was 15-1. I understand the last time out effort was not good, but I mean, ran against Scotland. I mean, much stronger horses if you look at who this horse has gone up against in the past compared to a lot of the other horses in this field. I mean, from a figures perspective, other than the debut, you look at consistency, man, consistently 83, 377, 79, and then that 71. This horse has been putting up strong numbers that honestly, even in the lower races, other than the debut, have been stronger than just about any horse in this field aside from the 8. So I think Seeking Unity could certainly play a role. And again, I just love consistency. And I like that this horse really enjoys sitting just off the leaders. So I would argue the 3, and I'm wondering if this is partially why you put the 3 above the 6, aside from also having the actual experience on the dirt, but will likely be the first of the non-speed horses to get the jump on the 8. So maybe, the 3 is able to get there and the 6 has too much to do to catch up to the 3. I certainly think this is an interesting price. And again, from a figures and performance perspective in the different types of fields, I think Seeking Unity is way better than 15-1 in this spot.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I handicapped it already with the morning lineup, but when I looked at it, I was pretty pleased to be getting 15-1. And the other thing I like here is this horse is only really routed in his career, now cutting back to the 7, and again is tactical enough and has isn't tactical sitting off really slow paces. So he's actually sat close to some decent paces, nothing super fast, but he sat close enough, like you said, to where if there's speed up front or if he's just trying to get up for second, I think he's going to be in a fantastic position, and the cutback should only help. He's proven that he can, he's passed horses in the sense of he's gotten the lead in a couple of these. He got the lead here and couldn't hold. He got the lead here, couldn't hold. Gets the lead here and does hold. Now maybe we're cutting back to the 7. Now maybe he can even either get the lead if the 8 just, folds the tent for whatever reason. I just like this one. And like you said, real quick on the last race, you look at a race, and obviously this horse didn't do anything in the race, but you got 3 next out winners, multiple next out in the monies, all with huge buyers. Now, again, he didn't do anything in it, but still, at least the field was there. So that loss, which looks horrible on the page, which is maybe why you're getting the 15-1, maybe just isn't as bad as it seems. Also, on the dam side, I like 23% win dirt sprints. So anytime you could see that, maybe there's some affinity that they just haven't unlocked yet for the dirt sprints. Real quick, I'll look back at, there's a couple people in the chat that mentioned the 5 Trackmate, 4-1, Lannery, Lucas, has been good sprinting, broke the maiden off the layoff, and then sort of jumped up into an allowance race and ran pretty well. And another one that I think could probably be sitting that same trip. Did you look at the 5 at all, Charlie? Did you even consider that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I see we have some comments about the 5 and the 2, so I'll touch on the 2 real quick. My only concern with the 2 is honestly just a lack of early speed. I think this race is too short. I think if this race was a mile or more than a mile, then the 2 from a figures perspective would certainly fit. But that's just my fear. I'm guessing that's what yours was.
Yeah, that horse just can't break. That horse just can't break it. I mean, that horse puts himself in the worst position every time. So yeah, going 7, I'm just not 100% sure. But another one though, if you could clunk up in the back end of the try or the back end of the super for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Could definitely get in top 3. And then with the 5, again, my concern was I just think this horse is going to want to go. I don't even know if the 5 will have enough speed to be able to get right with the 8, but I certainly think it'll be right up in there in just a hotly contested pace with a bunch of other horses. Again, you look at the 4 with 115 early pace, another one that's going to have to go. I just feel like when you have a bunch of horses that want to push up to the front, and one of those includes the clear strongest horse, again, I don't want to play horses that have the same strategy and strength as the heavy favorite. I want to look elsewhere. And then, real quick on the 3, the other thing I just wanted to point out, besides the field, you can also see it mentions that the horse was bumped at the gate, didn't necessarily have the cleanest break, at least according to the comments. I didn't get to watch the replay. So certainly something else to factor in. And again, you just see when this horse is honestly just not 23-1, has put up solid efforts. So certainly one to, again, from a value perspective, I really like a lot. And I can see obviously second, you feel the same way.
I mean, and at the maiden ranks was taking money, which, it's a decent sign. I mean, it was a 200, and one thing you always like, 280 grand purchase from a $7,500 stud fee.
Right.
I always like seeing that. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that's one for everybody to keep an eye out, and I'll be curious to see if that horse actually winds up taking some money. All right, let's move on. We'll move to race 7. Maiden special weight. Let's see. Let me refresh this. They said the scratches are in. Let's see if we have any. Doesn't look like here. Again, if they didn't hit this for some reason, anybody in the chat sees the scratches somewhere else. But right now, I don't see any here.
I just Googled on Keeneland's website. I'm not positive this is fully up to But what I'm seeing right now, the only scratches are in races 9 and 10. I see some notes about overweight and stuff like that, but the first
Okay.
race I see any scratches is 9 and 10 for now.
Okay, cool. Then again, if anything pops up and we're not looking at the up to date information, definitely give us a shout in the chat. But again, maiden special weight, 100,000, 7 furlongs. Looks like we have a field of 10 going. The one horse, 8-5, Asmussen and Gaffleon, Wicked Again. Let's bring up our picks. We again, look at us. We are in lockstep here. We are going with 419 exactly, which is shocking. So I'm going to give you the first choice to talk here. What do you like about the 4 Tunisian Spring at 3-1 for, hey, what a surprise, Wesley Ward again?
I mean, yeah, got to stick with the guy, Wesley Ward. Something I will always point out that's been highlighted before with Wesley's horses is he usually likes to have them working forwardly. So it is something to always watch out. They aren't. But this one, you see works on working at Keeneland with a minute flat and 5. So for me, that's a big green flag is to see that the horse is indeed working forwardly. That usually signals Wesley has the horse ready. I understand the debut was on turf. Now, obviously, now switching over to the dirt, but you had showed the figure earlier about how good Wesley Ward is when he switches horses from turf to dirt. Again, I like the works, the figure matches, and quite honestly, I'm not taking an 8-5 horse that looks like a money burner to me. I mean, you see 90 cents, $3.16. I mean, the longest this horse ever was $3.75. So this one horse is consistently being bet down and just not getting the job done. I understand that the figures away from that one turf race are decent, but I'm just not taking 8-5. I'll happily, I know 3-1 isn't some massive number, but from what we've seen in the early sample size, I'll happily take a chance on the 4 at 3-1.
Yeah, and I'll spoil it for the Keeneland power picks because I wrote the power picks up for today, and Tunisian Spring was my top play of the day on the whole card. So I'm all in on this horse with you. Again, you've said mostly everything. We had that same Ward stat from the last one, 6 for 14, 11 for 14 in the money, turf to dirt in the past year. From a breeding standpoint, Violence out of a Smart Strike mare. Looks like the dirt should be no issue. As like you said, is trained well on the dirt. The dam side, 4 for 12 in dirt sprints. And again, I think it could just be one. And Kentucky Downs is even weird, especially for first-time starters, and still ran well there with a nice turf figure. If he can run back to that figure, it puts him right in the mix. And I'm with you. We both have the 1 in second. Do you think, is that more of just hey, this horse always runs the race, just doesn't seem to be able to get up and get the win?
Yeah, for me, this horse just screams, I want to finish in the money, but I want to still take your money because you're going to only bet me to win.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's Tyler Gaffleon and Asmussen, one of the best trainers and my personal favorite jockey. So, I mean, when you get that duo together,
Nice.
They're always lethal. And I mean, again, certainly, from a figures perspective, it's not like the horse is running terrible. I mean, when I'm saying the horse is a money burner, it's not like this horse is getting betting down to favoritism and then is off the screen the whole race. And you're like, what happened? The horse is putting up solid figures and efforts. They're just not winning efforts. And again, I'm not going to take 8-5 on a horse where I'm like, oh, I think the horse could finish in the money. You don't bet 8-5 on in the money. You look for double digits on in the money. But again, it's too classy and strong to not put on my ticket.
I agree with you. I agree with everything you said. I need to touch more on that one. We both have the 9, and actually let's bring up Maiden Focus, who as his name says, does a lot of work with maidens and especially first-time starters. He's really good with that. Micro Beastie, the 9, drill on 9.6, was almost 2 full seconds faster than the next fastest drill at the distance, only 4 other workers. Also third straight bullet, outworked his barn mate, and in addition appeared to work with Mad Dash. Maybe notable because that name has been misrepresented. No such horse currently in training. So, but again, we appreciate Maiden Focus popping in with some of the details. So again, this is a first-time starter, Catalano, Lescano. What do you like about this one? For you, is this more of just an underneath play, first-time starter, or you think this horse has a shot to actually win the race?
So I was actually kind of flipping back and forth between the 9 and the 10, but I just want a little more value. I do think Run and Score is interesting. Put up an 83 figure last time out and lost by half a length after 3 straight duds off of a layoff. So certainly another one I would look at and has been working forwardly. Ultimately, I just didn't love how weak the fields were that the 10 was running against. And quite honestly, I just don't love the value at 9-2. Whereas the 9 for me, obviously.
Hey, real quick, before you move the 9, I was just going to say, and people can see my notes on the screen, Marcus O'Donnell, surprisingly, 0 for 39 in maiden special weights. Again, he's not the most high percentage trainer, but you're hitting an 0 for in maiden special weights. So again, if that's not the most advantageous stat when you're looking for a horse maybe on top. So sorry, go ahead. Go talk about the 9.
No, you're good. And yeah, I think the 10 could certainly be still underneath. But yeah, for me, at 9 to 2,
Yeah.
just not enough value to put on my ticket. But for the 9, interesting. I mean, you see the sire was only $700, but the horse is working bullet after bullet after bullet. I mean, to run a 59 and 2, 59 and 3, a minute 4, 48 2, a minute 1, this horse is working ridiculously forwardly. Love Wayne Catalano, Arlington legend. My grandpa knows him very well. So certainly when I saw him on the card, wanted to at least look into his horse to see if it's worth including. And this was not a biased pick. I mean, Micro Beasties working very forwardly, looks very interesting in the spot. I mean, have to see if the distance works. I am curious because, I mean, from the works, I would assume this horse is probably going to be pretty fast.
Yeah.
But question is, can the horse go for all 7 furlongs? And it's a little scary when you're going up against horses like the 4 and 1 that have at least proven ability, whereas it's a bit of a wild card. But at 8 to 1, I don't think you'll get 8 to 1. I think a lot of people will see those works. But absolutely love the value underneath, especially if you feel strongly about the 4 or the 1 horse, like how we do with the 4. I would love to play the 9 underneath because you're getting a lot more value putting a 9 to 1 below that could, or 8 to 1 that could win the race, or finish top 3 rather than an 8 to 5.
Oh, I mean, and if we can get the 8 to 5 out of there and you can get the 4-9 cold, that would be, I mean, that's going to pay beautiful. And if you look, I was just going to look real quick on the dam side. There's only been one runner digitized who was turned out to be a pretty nice horse, especially decent early. Speed horse, like you said, goes to the top, broke the maiden, and then allowance win with 94 buyer. So if this horse is anything like that, would definitely be a threat in this field. And if you're getting them at 8 to 1, again, I agree with you. The distance is tough. First time out, you just never know. But at an 8 to 1 price, I think all of that's already built into the price. So might as well take a shot. Real quick, we have Gussie. I don't recognize that name from normal. So Gussie, I'll pronounce it. Welcome if you're new to the show. We'll real quick go to the 5. City of Love, 30 to 1. Not one for me necessarily, but he's saying a little bit of buzz on the 5. You see off that, I mean, hasn't run since March. Had this nice, I mean, crazy 46 and 4 work, 2 back. Has some solid, not solid, excellent works back here. Sitting at 30 to 1, most likely because this race was just garbage. But what do you think about a horse like this where first out, they just don't run at all, but look good on the work tab? They gelded the horse. I guess they gelded it on May 24th, so it's been a little while now. Adding blinkers, carrying low weight. Is this a horse that maybe at a huge price you can see hitting the board here in a field where there's no world beaters in here? I mean, it's a solid field. That's about it.
I mean, yeah, again, for me, and I think we feel the same way. I feel like if there is a world beater, it feels like it should be the 4. But then honestly, I mean, as much as we love the 9, the works only means so much. We have to still actually see the horse perform. With the 1, I mean, the horse seems to be performing consistently in the money, but hasn't done, again, anything to really convince you that the horse couldn't end up dropping a dud. So I certainly think this is a race where you could be looking for some horse to include underneath. If you're asking to win, absolutely not. But if you're saying, could this horse surprise and finish 3rd in the money? And again, if you feel strongly on one of the heavier favorites and want to look for value, absolutely throw the 5 somewhere in there, I think. And I saw someone else comment about the 6, another horse that's double-digit odds that's working forwardly. I certainly think if you want to take a chance on any of these, the only concern I would slightly have is you can kind of argue that for any horse in this field. I mean, the 2 just worked in a minute flat. The 3 did a 47 and 4 and a 48 and 3. It seems like a lot of these horses are working fast. So maybe means a lot of them want to try to go, or will just have a lot of potential tactical speed in this race. We'll have to wait and see. For me, I think when I see a lot of horses that kind of fit that bill, it kind of turns me off. And especially when it's not from, well-known trainers. If this was, maybe a Chad Brown, Todd Pletcher horse that dropped a dud and then is working forwardly, then yeah, I'm a lot more interested. And I think the other thing, as you touched on, is if it was in a live race, like how we like the 3, where the horse dropped a dud but ran against a bunch of next out winners, then yeah, I'm more interested. For me, I'd be a little more hesitant. But if you're looking for a price in the, in 3rd place, why not look for a horse that's working forwardly in an open field?
Yeah, I agree. And in these races like this, you just never know. I mean, again, and the horse we like has never been on the dirt. So we can look at the works all we want, and you never know what's going to happen once they get their feet on the dirt and try to actually run on it. So I think there's a lot of good options here, again, especially, and one thing, and I'll just say this is more of a general, one thing we always look for is this a race where I think we can beat the favorite? And we have an 8 to 5 favorite here that at least you and I, and it looks like a lot of people in the chat, think we can beat. So why not take a chance on a long shot, take a chance on tossing the 8 to 5 altogether if you really want, and seeing if you can blow this thing up. All right, let's move on. We'll move to the next race, which is a very important race for the show, which we'll get into in a minute. Race 8, the Indian Summer Stakes, $250,000 purse, 5.5 furlongs on the turf. Again, it looks like no scratches based on what we've seen. we have the favorite, number 2, Amidst Waves for Weaver and Johnny V. And if you see here, the one horse, for people who are followers of the show will know this, and for people who are newer to the show, Shards, a horse by Kelsey Danner, is a horse that myself, Howard Kravitz, Paul Halloran, and Kyle Roscoe all own a piece of in partnership with Crown's Way Racing. So this is a big day for us. Those guys are at the track, so hopefully they're going to be in the winner's circle looking at this. And let's see, Charlie jumped on board, and we're both going with the one. Charlie, was this a heart play, or you don't want to be ostracized from the HHH crew, or is this a horse you actually like on top?
No, absolutely. This was strictly brain based. I mean, look, I know from the price perspective, seeing it 60 cents on the dollar, having Shards last time out means nothing, but it was more so for me the fact that Shards swung out a bit wide and was looking to, go say hi to the HHH Racing podcast and the win last time out, and still ended up dominating and blowing out that field. So for me, that was the effort I was expecting from Shards and just waiting to actually see happen. I love a horse. I know it's showing, 91 early and 57 late. I think 57 late to me is a little underrated and disrespectful. I think Shards has more late speed than that. I know the horse isn't a full-on closer, but again, from the kick that we saw, and I think if Shards could have gone in more of a straight line and not trying to go say hi and show off for the cameras while dominating that field late, I think we would have seen a better figure. And again, I just like a horse that can sit a little off the pace and then show that late speed. I'm not really worried about the rail. I think Shards can get a nice inside trip sit right behind the, the speed and the pressers and then go right by them all late. I think this is an open field for sure. I don't think you'll get 9-2. I think a lot of the public's going to see that last effort and bet this horse down a little, but I think it'll be the 1 and 2 battling for favoritism most likely, and I like Shards here.
Made in Focus ran sideways right into the winner's circle. Can easily improve today. Yeah, I can't bring it up because it's it's Colonial, so we don't have access here to the video. But Shards was basically just hanging out on the rail, and instead of waiting to look for a spot, Gallardo just sort of kicked out and just sort of circled the field. And it was almost like a race where you have the best horse and it doesn't really matter. Let me just get the horse out in the clear and they're going to run by. And that's exactly what he did. So again, for us, we're going to be rooting this horse home regardless. But for competition's sake, and this is a really good horse. So the number 2, Amidst Waves, Weaver, picking up Johnny V, had I rad last time. So, it's not like Johnny V is going to necessarily move the horse forward, but still it's a quality horse, 3 straight wins since they put this horse on the turf, which is something I love whenever you change something and it moves the horse forward. The only question I had, and I don't know how you think about this when you're handicapping, from a buyer standpoint, if you don't care about it, 71, 72, 71, hasn't been a ton of improvement. So is this a horse that just this is what he is and there isn't maybe a forward move there? Or do you even pay attention to something like that when you're handicapping?
No, honestly, for me, I think actually it's the fact that it was 3 races in a row where it starts to raise a red flag, which I think is interesting to people because something that a lot of people like as an angle, and I've started to, as I've learned more and more through handicapping, agreed with, is if a horse runs its best buyer, 2 races in a row, then maybe that's a horse that's then ready for a step forward. My concern, as you kind of touched on, was, this horse did run the 71 and 72 and then gets bet down to $1.55. And I'm guessing that's what a lot of bettors thought too. I know the horse got away with the win, but to be that big of a favorite and be, to be off the pace, then go up by a half a length, and you're probably thinking, oh, here comes the strong kick and that big, maybe 78, 79 figure, you get a win by a nose. The horse kind of has to grind it out. I mean, credit to Amidst Waves for getting the job done, but you don't see that big, strong finish to kind of show the horse is ready to take that step forward. I just feel like you look at Shards, again, I'm not trying, and again, I don't even own the horse, so this isn't biased, folks, but to go from that 54 to 70, I feel like to me looks a lot more promising for that another step forward. And for me, at a short price to go on and win by 5 lengths after being up by a head, that's what I would have expected Amidst Waves to do. And again, as you touched on, it can't be that the jockey wasn't getting enough out of the horse because you have Irad Ortiz, who's as aggressive as they come. So, you would have been asking for Amidst Waves to get on with it and would have been hoping for that late kick. I mean, again, from a consistency perspective, though, because I also preach that, still have to give credit to Amidst Waves, is running stronger races than Shards and put up great, still solid efforts, even if it was at short prices and small margins of victory. And I get why this horse is opening as the favorite. It's just, again, for me, it's not eye-catching enough that I want 3-1. And even if it does end up being something where, maybe the 2 goes off at 5-2 and Shards is like 3-1 or somewhere around there, 7-2, I would rather take the value on Shards. But I still think the 2 is the other main real contender in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, you can never discount winning, and that horse obviously knows how to win races. And for a young horse, that's not something. I just wanted to show this up. I've had this up on the screen. Crown Imperial, who who Amidst Waves beat by a nose last time, did come back on Friday in the Jessamine, ran a pretty solid third to Buku and Farrell's Wine. So just wanted to show that even though that was a tight race, that horse did come back and run well in a graded stakes. So it may be a little bit better on paper than even we're giving it credit for, but we'll see. Again, we're going to go to the 6. You and I both have the 6. Now, to me, the 6 is sort of I have the horse in third, but it's sort of a step below for me. I have the 1 and the 2 as sort of the 2 top contenders, and then the 6 is just sort of filling out the back end. What's your thoughts on this one?
No, I was the same way. I had thought about maybe trying to look towards Bledsoe and, not trying to take the Wesley Ward bias, but simply because, you're getting Luis Saez. Again, it is Wesley Ward, and the horse, on debut ran well, but that effort when I watched it back last time out was just so hard to watch that I couldn't put Bledsoe in there. And I felt the same way. I thought this was really between the 1 and the 2. And then my process of elimination, when you look from a figures and performance perspective, the 6 just made the most sense to me. I will say I don't really like the 4-1 at all. Because, if you play that 4-1 under the 1 or 2, if you feel strongly, you're not really getting much value. I would personally not really want to do more than something with just the 1 and 2 or a heavy bet on whoever you feel the strongest about. But look, ran a 77 figure, which certainly fits in this spot. Asmussen Trains ran a very solid second last time out, just couldn't quite get the job done, but a very respectable effort against Palm Tree, I believe, is a horse we're going to be talking about later in the show. But yeah, I just agree. I think Committee of One is just the one I was like, I'll throw this one in third.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to point out, and again, these are pretty inexperienced horses, so you could take some of this with a grain of salt, but this is from Committee of One's last race where he popped the 77 buyer. And if you look, pretty much everyone in the race, sort of, except for this horse, really just anyone who had run before, you see 52 to 65, 24 to 67, 57 to 68. So it always makes you question whether that was just a bunch of horses who were really jumping up, or was the figure just a little bit high for that day. And then the only horse who came back since was Deep Strike, who actually ran back to the debut from a buyer standpoint. So that sometimes makes you question this. And if that 77 from Committee of One isn't as real as it looks, then that horse is definitely sort of a step back. Let's see. There's a couple in the comment here. We have Charles B saying single the 2 in race 8. Charles, we can't do that. We're not leaving shards off the ticket. So you're barking up the wrong tree here. Hammer the 4 in the turf pick 3. I didn't mention that, by the way. The 5th, which we didn't talk about, the 8th and the 10th, in case somebody doesn't know, there's a $3 all turf pick 3. So 2 of the races we're going to be talking about are included in that, including this one. So Jimmy likes the 4 Sponge Bath. I actually looked at this horse, had just sort of a notch behind the debut where it got the win. I think the next out runners were pretty bad. That's the note I have. But did run behind a next out stakes winner, Aspenite, I think, if that's the one who won the stakes next out. So I think this is a horse has been working well. Again, Catalano, Gaffleone seems like a combination that you like. I think this horse has a shot, too, at 8-1. I definitely would need to move forward. But again, with 2-year-olds, you never know what the hell they're going to do. Cutting back to the 5.5, too, where it won on debut. Any thoughts on this one before we move on?
Yeah, this was actually one I was going to touch on that I was just going to say real quickly, highlighting 2 other horses. I don't have much to say, but just for underneaths, I think the 3 is certainly interesting for Catalano, simply because I understand the figure wasn't much, but still made the win off the pace. And again, you want to talk about another horse working forwardly with a 46-4 last time out. I just feel like that's something you have to highlight for a horse that could certainly at 15-1 fit to finish underneath. And then I also think the 10 is another one who, ran a very solid 78 figure. Again, ran a 36-4 for the workout last time out and 1 going away. I just think those are, I'd say the 3, 4, and 10 are the 3 price plays that I like in terms of horses to maybe throw underneath if you feel strongly about the 1 or the 2, or maybe you want to, do a stone cold exacta 1, 2, or 2-1, and you're looking for some horses underneath because you feel like it's a 2-horse race. I think those are 3 horses, the 3, 4, and 10 that I would look towards if you're looking for some value.
Yeah, you could do a stone cold try too. You can go 1, 2, 1, 2, and some of the prices underneath or in the middle. Exactly. I actually had this 3 cows. I would imagine we're gonna call it. I actually had that one on my A line. I had 4 horses on sort of my A line. So this was basically the next one off the top 3. So I'm with you guys here. The next out runners weren't very good. Was the favorite and won pretty close. But you see this bullet come back. I always like when a horse runs well was training well going into the race, runs really well, and then comes out and is training well again. It just seems to me that they're holding their form. And if you can hold your form and move forward again, I think the buyer is what's going to scare people away. And that's why this horse is 15-1. But we've seen 2-year-olds, buyers can jump. I mean, if that's what you focus on, a buyer can jump 20 points in a second, third race. So I'm not too concerned by that. And again, you're getting all that built in at 15-1. All right, let's move on. We'll move on. Now we have the two big Breeders' Cup win and you're in races. Oh, we actually have a scratch here. So we're looking at the Juddmonte Spinster, $600,000 purse, 3-year-olds and up, going at 1 1/8 miles. We have two, what we expect to be players in the Breeders' Cup Distaff. The favorite, Nest, at 6-5. Second choice, Idiomatic, 7-5. And I think this is where you and I finally differ, but not by much. We just switched the top two. You are going with Nest on top, with Idiomatic in second. Talk to me about why you prefer Nest this time out and think she can turn the tables.
I mean, yeah, I really think you could go either way. For me, this was a very clear 2 and 1 horse race. And to clarify what I mean by that, I feel like it's very clear to me the win is between the 2 and the 3. And just compared whether the 6 was going to be in or not, I feel like the 4 is the clear-cut third best horse, but just, a level above everyone else, but that 2 and 3 are levels above everyone else. So I really do think this is a coin flip race where you can go either way. The odds kind of, 7-5 and 6-5. Point to that. I mean, look, this horse, Irad, Pletcher, the three of them have been sticking it out together for just about every single race this horse has run. Consistent. I mean, you look at the price from a price standpoint. I mean, there's never any value on Nest. You're seeing like $2.40, $5.30 are about two of the biggest prices you'll ever find. Most of the time, it's $1.50 or below. A lot of them are under $1. So I get that there usually isn't much value on Nest. But look, I'm just hoping the horse can turn the tables. I understand Idiomatic got the best of Nest last time out, but I tend to always be more biased. I'm not avoided. I tend to be more biased towards stalkers and closers. I'm not the biggest fan of speed horses, especially when, for me, the distance gets to like that 7 furlongs and beyond. I tend to lean the other way. I'm also kind of just hoping that, some of these longer out horses understand that they likely have no, way of winning from closing. So I'm kind of hoping that the aspect is maybe some of them try to make Idiomatic work for it and that Nest sits a nice trip. That was my angle, but I can certainly see Idiomatic win as well. I think these two are two very talented horses.
Yeah, my only question with Nest, and I agree with you, I think it's pretty much a 2-horse race, at least for the win end. I guess the biggest question with Nest is came back off the long layoff and had a really impressive win beating Clairiere, which at the time looked super impressive because Clairiere had been great. Now Clairiere since then hasn't been great. So the question is, was this win as impressive maybe as it looked? And then if you look, and again, if this is what you care about, if you go from a buyer standpoint, there hasn't been any improvement from last year. And Nest, I think Nest has had some detractors where, hey, against some of the top competition, she can beat her. Like last year, she was beating the 3-year-olds, but when she stepped up against some of the top competition, she wasn't able to get the job done. And now maybe again, she just hasn't improved enough, and she's still the same horse, but she's getting bet like she's one of the top horses. Again, she might be, and if she runs off the screen today, it wouldn't shock you. But I'm still a little skeptical, especially that they made this horse 6-5. Let's go to Idiomatic, who we both think obviously is one of the top 2 contenders. For me, putting her on top was purely a pace scenario again, where I just don't think there's anybody in here that's going to go. And we had I didn't scratch them in here. Let me refresh this as well. We scratched Misty Vale, but I just don't think, I think Idiomatic might just get the same trip. And if she gets the same trip, Nest is going to have to move earlier, work harder to get to Idiomatic, on the turn or before they get to the stretch, because I don't think she's going to be able to run her down if Idiomatic gets an easy lead. What are your thoughts there? Do you agree that if Idiomatic gets on the top and can back it down with Giroux, who's excellent on the front end, is that going to be maybe a repeat of last time out if that happens?
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's certainly my concern, and that's what I was kind of touching on earlier. Is I think if Idiomatic's able to set the pace and control it, slow it down, not have to work hard for that lead, and just basically she's able to just go do her thing like last time out. Again, you see with the blue figure signaling that it was a colder pace, and I think it becomes Idiomatic's race to lose. Again, what I'm just kind of banking on here with my angles, again, just hoping that when you see a bunch of these other horses that are so much slower on the figures and just are major double-digit odd horses, just kind of hoping that, again, that they kind of see the angle that, look, if we choose to sit back, none of us have a strong enough kick to get by Nest, and none of us are fast, and like we're just going to give Idiomatic the race. So my kind of angle and hope is just the fact that these owners and jockeys, on these long shot horses kind of understand their only way of even having a chance is hoping to force an uncomfortable race for Idiomatic and hope that Nest just doesn't fire and can't get there, because the safest bet to win in this race, which again, even though I'm going against it, is Idiomatic just getting to control the pace and get away. So I'm hoping that's what the other jockeys and trainers see for this race is if somebody doesn't give Idiomatic a fight, they're not going to be able to kick with Nest. So they're basically just forfeiting the race. So that was my angle.
Yeah, and it's funny, though, because we always say that, and we always want these jockeys to go out and contest the lead. And we see it all the time where they don't, and you're just pissed. And you're like, how'd they let this horse just run free on the lead and they get away? Because I'm like you, I don't usually favor speed. So my concern is always, okay, if you're going to get a speed horse out there and these jockeys are going to do what they do and just sit back and let them go and let them back down the fractions, then you're just pissed the whole time. And exactly. I can't count how many times I'm mad that I'm sitting there going, there was supposed to be other pace in this race. Now in this one, yep, she's a clear best. Let's real quick. We both have the 4 and 3rd. I didn't have this horse as necessarily a win contender, but I do think if a horse, say Nest, maybe it depends, whichever one you like, say Nest tries to go with Idiomatic and moves too early and sort of uses too early, I think La De Vida is the kind of horse who could just come up and even get second. Or if Nest if someone goes with Idiomatic and then Nest sits the perfect trip and Idiomatic fades and sort of backs up, then I think a horse like this can come up and get second. I'm not sure. I think all hell would have to break loose for this horse to beat the top two. But I do think there's a scenario where this one can get up into second. And if you want to just pick one of the ones you like on top and sort of do a cold exacto or even back it up with this horse, I don't think that's a bad play.
No, not at all. I think if there's a pace meltdown, I think La Vida is a certain contender to actually just win the race. And as you kind of mentioned, if a bunch of these other long shots, as I was saying, kind of decide to send on the top with Idiomatic and there's a pace breakdown, that opens up for the 4 to at least come in second. If Nest is just sitting too far back and doesn't get back to those figures, I mean, if you look from a figures perspective to the 95 and 94, La De Vida is nearby. If Nest doesn't fire, La De Vida could get up there. So certainly a horse where if you want more value and you feel strongly about Nest or Idiomatic and feel strongly against the other one, great value there. Or if it's not going to pay much, but if you do want to just do a stone cold try, at least without doing any other, match up, just do like stone cold, 3-2-4 or 2-3-4, you can still make something. And again, as you kind of touched on, maybe Nest, they're a little nervous about Idiomatic getting away. Maybe Nest pushes Idiomatic a little more and then fades back and La De Vida goes by, or maybe they kind of set up a hot pace. I doubt it, but if they were to set up a hot pace against each other, the fact that there are at least outcomes that could favor La De Vida, and then the fact that the horse is simply better than everyone else besides 2 and 3 certainly could be in the money if you want to play something stone cold, or again, if you want to look for value on an exacta. I think the 4 is certainly the one that fits here.
Yeah, one thing I did like before we move on, I mean, this horse 2 for 3 win, 3 for 3 in the money at going a mile and an eighth, and has the lifetime buyer top, which again, it was just 3 races ago, so it's not like it was a long time. Cut the horse back a bit, shortened it up, but I think if she can run back to this race here, it's something similar. I don't see why not. I think everything you said works and does have a win over the track. Now, it was a long time ago. It was, actually almost a year ago now, but still, at least it's shown a win at the track, likes the distance, can come from behind. And if something else happens funny up front, I think this one definitely has a shot. I don't have anybody else. Anybody else you want to touch on here? Are you good to move on?
No, I'm good to move on.
All right. Last race of the day, another Breeders' Cup winning you're in. The Castle and Key Bourbon Stakes, purse $350,000, a mile and a 16th on the turf. Let's see. It looks like we have a full field of 12. The only scratch is the 13. The 13, 14, 15, who I think were the AEs. So no scratches in the main body of the field. We have 12 horses going. Again, this one's wide open. The favorite, number 5, noted for Pletcher and Irad, so not super surprising. Here's where you and I finally differ a little bit. Not by much, though. We still have a little bit. We have one horse the same, the Chalk, but you're going to go with the 12, First World War, Gaffleone again. It seems like you got a type today, so you're sticking with your boy Tyler G. So what do you like? Let me scroll down here. What do you like about this 12 on the win end here?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if you had mentioned, but real quick, all the also eligibles are the ones that scratch. So as far
Yep.
as it's showing right now, it is just going to be the regular full field of 12. But so yeah, for First World War, I mean, Brendan Walsh and Tyler Gaffalione, that seems to be the strongest duo. Again, as someone who follows Tyler Gaffalione closely, they tend to be the duo that just dominates. And, we had touched on betting and boozing when we had to cover some Kentucky Down stuff specifically there. They tend to thrive. But look, I just like the way this horse just flew by. I mean, you see the horse was in sixth and behind by 5 lengths. And the next thing you know is within a head and then just goes on to win by 2 lengths. So I like the kick that this horse showed, but still the figure 73, I get it's not eye popping, but it's still something strong enough. And for me, another thing I was just paying attention to is the fact that I'm a little concerned with the 5 that we don't see that strong sort of kick away move. You see the horse was bet down on debut and didn't get the job done, then wins by just a half a length. And then admittedly, last time out at a more of a price was able to get the job done. So I certainly think the 5 is interesting. I just don't see enough from Noted to take 3-1. And because it's Irad and Pletcher, you're probably going to get no better than I'd say 3-1, maybe 7-2 if the market really doesn't like the horse, but I don't see that. Whereas with the 12, I certainly think because of the connections, the horse will be bet down. But I still think firmly you're getting at least 7-2, 4-1 on the 12. And I would much rather take that value. I don't necessarily love the horse being all the way on the outside, but I think if Tyler can navigate towards a little more towards the inside and just sit a stalking trip, I think the 12 is a big threat. And also the 12 beat Tireless last time out, who was a horse that I thought ran very solidly for Pletcher, who was going to have Luis Saez, but obviously scratched and was another one of the main contenders in this field. So that's how I kind of landed on the 12. And I'm curious to see what you ended up with the 2, because I don't have this horse anywhere, but I do like you went for a price because I don't like the favorite here.
Well, and real quick on the 12, I was with you. The thing that scared me a little bit, and you mentioned the outside draw, which was a little scary. And this horse, yeah, it did come from behind, and it looks really good on paper, and it was really good on replay. It was really good as well. The only thing I thought was not concerning, but was the trip too good, because this horse was able to just hug the rail. The rail opened up and was able to get through, so I had a ground-saving trip. Now you're going all the way outside. So either Tyler's going to have to maybe go a little bit to try and work out position, or doesn't break well and is stuck a little bit too far back for the win end unless the pace heats up. That was my only concern, because everything else you said about this horse I really liked, and I was really close to putting this one in the top 3 and near there. Yeah, we'll jump to the 2, because this is the one I had on top. And this is sort of a in a race where, like you said, we talked about Noted, who's the 3-1 favorite. And there's questions, doesn't lay over the field from a figure standpoint, especially on the turf. You see 63, 64. Now, again, whether you care about buyers or not, it's a gauge for who's on what level in the race. At least that's a good starting point for me, is to say, okay, what's it going to take to win this race from a buyer standpoint, and which horses do I think can get there? Regardless of whether, I'm not going to handicap and say this horse is the best buyer, I'm going to automatically go with them. But I think this is a favorite that's beatable, and we're always looking for beatable favorites. And in a field like this, I'm like, why not take a shot maybe with a huge price? And I looked at it, and here's one that I think is going to get overlooked, and it's 15-1. Because of the 59 buyer. And again, I think a lot of the odds, and Nick Tamro does a great job, but he knows that a lot of people look at buyers, and if they see a really low buyer, it's going to scare them off. But one thing I liked is, from a time form standpoint, time form gives this horse a 96. Now, generally you say maybe 20 points subtracted for the buyer. So if you follow time form and you back up to 20, now you're looking at a 76 buyer potentially, 17-point jump. And that 76 puts this horse right in the mix with everybody else, if you think that that's a logical argument. So if that was the case, and if this was a 76, then I look at it and go, would this horse be 15-1? What I did like closed, the race fell apart a little bit in the sense that the speed sort of faded. So I don't know if that's going to happen again. There's speed in here, but there's not lightning speed. So I don't know if it's going to superheat up. But I do look at this horse and go, if we can run back, and if this horse is more of a 76 horse than a 59, we know the distance is no issue. Obviously, debuted at 1 1/16, which I like, because they knew that this horse was going to go long, and you could see that based on the breeding. And then finally, one interesting fact I thought, Phil Bauer, he won the Jessamine on Friday with a maiden winner. So a maiden winner last out, moving straight into a graded stakes. Why not? Let's do it Friday and Sunday, and we'll get Phil Bauer the double in the filly and the male versions of the long distance turf races. So let's see if we can catch this one. Any thoughts now that I've sort of made my case? Is this one that you would at least consider maybe in an underneath position at a big price?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, for me, I just personally am all over the 12. I don't think the horse is any sort of lock, but I just really love the horse in this spot. But in terms of after that, I think there's, I mean, I'll touch on a little more after this thought, but I think you can honestly go about 5 or 6 different ways for who you want to put underneath. And for me, yeah, I'd be a lot more tempted to place a bet with the 12 over the 2 at 15 to 1 than the 5 at 3 to 1, because again, you're not going to get much more value than that. And I'm just not sold on the 5. I mean, the figures don't match, in my opinion. As you mentioned, the strong effort was on the dirt. So now you're going back to the turf, and there's nothing to really guarantee it. And one other thing I did want to note about the 12 that I liked is, running the mile, which some of these other horses that I'll talk about that I like didn't, and that the fact that that was at Kentucky Downs, everything at Kentucky Downs really feels, because of the interesting layout, farther than it really is. So for me, that actually kind of upgrades some of the other horses in this race that ran at Kentucky Downs, where normally I'm hesitant, but because of the fact that those horses are stretching out when they already ran at a track that plays longer than the distance indicates. And yeah, some people in the chat were talking about the horse that I'll talk about next, which was Palm Tree, which was a horse we noted earlier, because I believe that's the horse that beat Committee of One, and which is the horse we talked about earlier, that 6 that we liked underneath. But ran a 78 figure, which is solid. The conditions obviously weren't quite as good for the turf as it was good, not firm. But the works fit with the 48 and 2 and 48 and 4, as the chat had mentioned, working forwardly for sure. And another one where, I don't love the 9 to 2 value, but again, I like Brendan Walsh a lot. He's been having his horses run pretty well lately, so I certainly think Palm Tree is a contender. And then before you touch on the 3, I just wanted to quickly point out, I think the 6 Vote No and the 9 Coin Miner are interesting, because those are 2 horses that came from off the pace at 6.5 at Kentucky Downs, which again plays longer. So I certainly think those 2 could fit and are both working forwardly. I honestly more so like the 9, I think, than the 6, simply because this horse was 4 lengths off the lead and then got up within a length and just did a minute flat. And is sticking with James Graham, which another thing I like is, the horse has been going off at double-digit odds twice and loses third by a neck at 19 to 1, and then at almost 11 to 1 wins the race. So in terms of taking money, that hasn't seemed to affect the horse at all. And then again, you could say the same thing though with Vote No. It was 8 to 1, and then ended up winning second time out after also winning on debut at over 12.5 to 1. So those are some other horses I would look for underneath. But I agree with you. I think this is one of those races where you can either, look for a long shot just flat out because we don't like the winner, or kind of how earlier we talked about how we both like the Wesley Ward 4 horse to be Wicked again, I believe, that heavy favorite 1 horse. You could also, if there's a less of a price that you really like to win, look for some long shots to put underneath. But this is another one of those races. I'd say this one and the one with that 1 horse, those are the 2 where you should definitely look to bet against the favorite.
Yeah, and I think this is sort of a spread race. If you're looking at horizontals, we got a few different. We'll hit on some of these horses. We have a few more in the chat before we sign off. This was one where in the coin miner race, it's another one where some of the horses that ran back sort of ran a little bit back to their original buyer. And so maybe this one was a little bit inflated, the one, the Coin Miner 74. So just for people to look at, you don't always have to take the buyer number if that's something you're going to focus on. You don't have to take that at face value. Always take a look, see if everyone in the race sort of jumped up for that race, and then maybe they came back to the mean the race after that. That's usually something to look at. Let's see what we have. We have Double Your Money, the 11, who we touched on a little bit, picks up Santana, took money in both starts, got the win, like you said, at Kentucky Downs going a mile, which was on the lead and held, but that always plays a little bit longer, was able to set a sort of a moderate pace. So again, if you're outside all the way in the 11, but this horse was on the 10 in the 10 hole last time out of 10 horses and still was able to get to the lead. So I think this one definitely has a shot. Let's see. We have any more? Race number 10.
I see the 7. Somebody like the 7
Fortune Seller. Yes. For another one where there's another one there. Like I said, there's speed in here. There's not like lightning fast speed, but there's enough horses who have sort of, if you're going from a time form standpoint or just by fractions, they all seem like similar speed. So there could be multiple horses that are going out. Fortune Teller, or Fortune Seller, did you have any thoughts on this one? Moving from the synth all the way back.
Since the turf effort wasn't that bad and the works have been solid, I certainly think Fortune Seller is another one to consider. But kind of as you mentioned, I'm more so looking for horses that are off the pace, because I think, as you mentioned, I know this is, as we touched on, it's a longer race going a mile and 16th, and there's a lot of horses that are going to want to go. I mean, again, if you're looking through the figures, I don't think the one that I like is going to go, but it'll certainly be just off that pace. The 3 who I know you like, so I'll let you touch on, is going to go for sure. I don't think the 5 is necessarily going to go, but it'll probably, again, right off the pace. The 6 that I like will be right off the pace. The 7's going to go. I think the 9 will be a little off the pace, but as we look through the 11, again, another speed that's going to have to go. The 12 who I like, I don't think has to go, but will probably be sitting again off the pace. So for me, it was a little worrisome because, if this was 5.5 furlongs or something, then, maybe if we have a lot of sprinters, then it's chaos. But I feel like when I see a lot of horses that are going to want to go, and again, we've touched on how you and I lean more towards stalkers and closers anyway, but I just feel like this race is screaming look for off the pace, which is, again, another reason why you've kind of convinced me more into the 2 being a real contender at 15-1, is this feels like a race you don't want a horse that's going to be right on the lead.
Yeah, and actually, real quick, you mentioned the 3. I had this horse in my 3rd spot. Cherie DeVoe has just been pretty hot, 4 for 15, 12 for 15 in the money in graded stakes in the past 5 months. So her horses have just been firing, even at graded stakes level. So again, at 10-1, if you're looking for a horse either underneath or who can get the win. In the debut, was just way too far back, broke badly from the rail, most likely got sort of shuffled, was in traffic, and then still closed. I like, again, on a debut, the horse was the favorite. On debut, had everything go wrong, but still ran on at the end, which I like, and they didn't just sort of pack it in. Then in the next race, was able to get close to a relatively decent pace, a pretty hot pace in some spots, was able to get close and then just buried the field as the favorite. So if this horse can work out this trip again and behind some of the other speed, and actually has the highest time form early pace, but if this horse, if he can work out this trip behind some speed horses that I don't love to hold on, I think this horse is dangerous, and you're getting this one at double digits. But I think this is a spread race. I think this is a race where you can get a price because, again, I think the favorite is suspect at least enough to where if the favorite doesn't win, all hell can break loose. And I think a bunch of these horses could win on top. I mean, if you see here on my thing, I had multiple A's, B's, C's. I almost had every horse in the race. So you figure the guaranteed exactas just play the 4-7 because they're the only 2 that I tossed. But that's usually the way I look at it. Like, what can happen that's going to completely screw every ticket that I have? So, right. All right, I think that's enough. We've hit over the hour mark, which is plenty. But I think this is a fun sequence. A couple of the last Breeders' Cup winning your ins. There's not many more after this. This is basically the last big day in the U.S. for Breeders' Cup winning your ins. Any final thoughts on this sequence, the weekend as a whole, or anything else?
No, I mean, I think honestly we did a really good job of covering it. As you mentioned, I was just going to say, I think the 10 race is certainly one that could be more of a spread. I mean, again, if you feel strongly about a contender, like how I do, and some people in the chat have agreed with the 12, certainly take advantage of those odds and play against favorites. But also, again, like you mentioned, play those exactas. I mean, we covered like eight horses or so out of the 12 as legitimate contenders to finish top 3. So certainly a race to be able to make some money in. And then, I want last thing I will shout out is shout out to the Bears for getting their first win of the season. Big win over the Commanders for Dick Butkus. And it was finally good to see something go right for once. Hopefully Fields proves the answer, and hopefully the Bears can have a decent season. I know Boss Man will be happy about that too, and same with Kyle. So I just wanted to give the Bears a quick shout out.
I mean, obviously, I was going to say, as a Bears fan, for you, the Dick Butkus news was the big week. But the real important news that I'm sure you're sad about is the end of the Chase Claypool era in Chicago. I mean, it was so long and it was so successful that it must be hard to move on from a player like that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, his incredible highlight reel of the 1 touchdown catch against the Buccaneers is just going to be running through my head over and over again. The one play I saw him make.
I'm surprised there's not a poster behind you. I mean, I think we need that.
I know. I'm thinking about getting a wall. I might just have to, move where my TV is, because that wall doesn't have anything. Just take the TV down and just put up a huge poster of that 1 touchdown catch to be reminded of how incredible he was for that 2nd-round pick that became a 1st-round pick to have. I think they said DJ Moore in that one game against the Commanders had more yards and touchdowns than he had in his whole career with the Bears.
He had in his whole career.
Certainly felt good to read.
Yeah, now he'll wind up being the next Will Fuller or something in Miami. Any last before you sign off? Do you have one NFL play that you love today?
Well, one of them actually, which ties into me and some of the guys on the podcast, are part of a pool. So we had really liked the Jaguars, and so far they seem to be holding up. But if I look through real quick, I mean, I like the 49ers against the Cowboys in that primetime game a lot. I really like the Texans. I'd say my top two things I really like are outside of the Jaguars are the Texans and the Ravens. I think the Steelers are a disaster and the Ravens are minus. They were 3.5 or 4, and now it's 4.5. But I think the Steelers offense can't get anything going, and Kenny Pickett's going to play through injury against a great Ravens defense. And then the Falcons, I mean, Desmond Ridder is not the answer. That offense is terrible, and the Texans seem to get it going. And I know people in the chat like Stroud's over on his passing yards. I like the Texans at plus 2.5 a lot. I think they can win that game outright.
I like it. I like Detroit. Detroit's the one play. Detroit's probably my top play. I have a few others, but I actually will
anything against the Panthers is a good play.
I mean, anything, right? And I figure the Panthers on the road, I don't think can score enough with anyone, especially a Detroit who can open up their offense. They get Jamison Williams back today. All right, so signing off for myself, Pete Visco, Charlie Freeman. Again, Keeneland only power picks. They'll be back up for next weekend tomorrow morning. Take a look on our shows this week. We're going to start doing some Breeders' Cup early previews on Wednesday on Betting and Boozing, on Thursday on the flagship show. So a lot of exciting stuff coming up. The next few weeks is going to be a lot of Breeders' Cup talk. And again, you see on the bottom of the screen, go to YouTube, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. But again, for myself, Pete Visco, for the B&B co-host Charlie Freeman, thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate the chat. We really appreciate you spending time with us. And everybody, like Howard likes to say, let's crush those bets today. See ya.
If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.